Hey guys, hope everyone is doing well. Woo. Yeah, y'all know I'm always on my hair. Hey Rochelle, how are you? Good to see you on here. I am sorry I am late with my scope. Um, it I'm about 15 minutes late, so I better get going. Hey Elizabeth, welcome to the scope. So what I discovered is I'm different and I'm cool with that. I am so cool with that. Sorry if you guys hear the background noise. I am here in my office, and I figured that it is the one place I can at least come, but I may have a few teacher interruptions. Perhaps that may come if they're still in the building or have questions. The cheerleaders are practicing right outside of my office, so you'll probably hear some of that music come on while they are working. But I discovered that I'm different and I'm cool with that. So I'll touch on a few points here and get going with the scope. And then I'm going to pass the scope to Dan Kreiness. He will be on in 15 minutes at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And his handle is D Kreiness, and I'll show you that at the end. So the first thing that I want to talk about is that my teaching has evolved over the 20 years that I've been in education, just about. And I've discovered that. And I discovered that when I started in 2000, I figured that I had the gifts and the talents. I loved what I was doing. I was very passionate. But in these past few years, my thinking has been challenged about how I approached teaching and learning, the outcome that I got from students. And so I discovered that, man, I have been doing that thing wrong for a long time. And unfortunately, I'd like to think I'd like to be able to go back and redo and be able to impact those students in a different way. Take what I know now and be able to go back and impact those students then. But for what it was worth at that particular time, hey Randall, good to see you. I think that it is what it is. And so my teaching has certainly evolved over the past 20 years. And boy, I probably did a disservice to a lot of students. And we all probably feel like we have learned and we have grown over the years and our teaching experiences. Those of you that are instructional coaches or supporting teachers, there are things that we wish that we knew then that we now know. But it's okay. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with where I'm at now because I know better. I'm doing better in this current state. Now, it would be problematic if I know better and I choose to resort back to how things were just because they were comfortable and because they were familiar. I have high expectations. No, I do, and I think we all do. And we all, I think with the right work, Randall, we all have high expectations. We want good for ourselves. We expect excellence of ourselves. We push, and that's why we are the tide of teachers that are changing the narrative. So that's my first point. My teaching has evolved over the past 20 years, and I discovered that. There's a lot of good happening in public education. That's my next point. um, we don't always hear those narratives and we don't always hear those stories. And I must say that I am proud to be an educator. I'm proud to be an educator working for a public school system. I'm proud to know that we are trying to do the right work. We are rolling our sleeves up. We are pushing teachers to improve their instructional practices, to improve their pedagogy, to focus on the art and the science of teaching. And then I'm also proud to know that we really impact and influence students to go out and to do some amazing, amazing things. And not only when they leave us, but then when they are in our building as a training ground. So there is a lot of good happening in public education. There are teachers that are taking risks, that don't mind failing, that don't mind listening to students and appreciating what their students bring to the table. There's a lot of student-centered instruction, teachers facilitating that learning versus controlling what students controlling the narrative or the outcome or the experience that happens in the classroom. And so there's a lot of good happening in public education. And I've discovered that, especially over these past few years. We are not what the media portrays. We are not what the parents post on the Facebook groups with the ranting and raging. Now, are there ways to improve things in education? Are there schools that may seem and appear to be dysfunctional? Are there individuals in schools that may give the school a bad rep? Absolutely. But as a whole, I think there are a lot of great things happening in public education, and I'm here to applaud that. And I think that listening to the teachers, especially those that are scoping today, you'll hear a lot of that and you'll see that there's a lot of good happening in public education. So, once again, my first point is my teaching has evolved over 20 years. There's a lot of good happening in public education. And my third point is that I know my voice and I'm confident in that. Um, I think sometimes I'm okay. I'm okay in the skin that I'm in. I'm okay in the place that I'm at. I don't necessarily need a platform. I don't need a stage. I don't really need a title. I don't need any of that because I'm comfortable with who I am. I move about, but I just love being in the space with people that aren't afraid to get their hands dirty, to roll up their sleeves, to do the work that are going to do right by kids, by the communities in which we live. And so that's my voice. I can walk into a room and I'm cool and I'm confident in who I am. I don't need to be the main speaker, the featured speaker, the keynote. I don't need to be any of those things because I know who I am. And I've discovered that. I'm comfortable. I can walk in. I'm not an introvert, um, but I'm okay. I can have a seat at the table. And when it's time for me to say what I need to say, I will jump in and I'll say it and let it be heard, whether that is in agreement with what's happening in the room or whether that is a pushback or a challenge of thinking. And so I know my voice. I have it. I'm using it and I'm confident in that. And that should never be mistaken for anything less than that. And so I encourage you all, the viewers and watching as well, to just know who you are and be okay with it. There's no title, there's no amount of money, there's none of that that really makes you who you are. It's your character and it is who you are on the inside that really shines the brightest. I recognize because of that confidence, I'm also an influencer, whether I want to be or not. There are a lot of people that value what it is that I'm saying, and I think the same should be true for you. I love learning. I discovered that. I do love learning. I am a forever learner. And that's not just to cliche that quote, but I truly am curious. I want to ask the right questions. I want to figure things out. I want to know what it is that you know, because if you know it, then hopefully you'll share it with me and I'll also know. And if we all know a lot together, then we're that much more impactful. Doesn't make sense for one person to hold all of the knowledge. And so I'm a learner. I'm just curious by nature. And then finally, I care about programs for youth. I discovered that. I started off in elementary, and I always thought that the little ones was where it was at. And there are a lot of you that work with the littles, and I love that group. But then I also recognized that when I started work with high schoolers, I really love the impact of um, how I influence young people, the conversations that we can have, and then to actually see them graduate from high school and go off into the world, talk about what their next steps are, whether that is post secondary, whether that is going right into the workforce or military, or just going, just figuring it out. And so I really recognize that I enjoy programs for young people and bringing that into the schools through community partnerships. And that has become a passion point for me. And so I discovered that that's also a skill and a knack that I have that comes seamlessly. It's like, hey, all you can do is just ask. Ask. If someone says no, then no, it is. And then you move on. Someone will give you a yes. And so I recognize those things. And those are the things that I've discovered. My teaching has evolved over 20 years. There's a lot of good happening in public education. I discovered that my voice gives is my confidence as well. I recognize that I am an influencer, whether I choose to be or not, and that I love learning and I care about programs for youth. And that is what I've discovered. That's my I discovered. So coming up next at 4 p.m., so that's just in a matter of a few minutes, is my good friend Dan Kreiness. And if you are not following Dan and you have not watched his Leader of Learning or heard his Leader of Learning podcast, then I advise that you definitely do that soon. And I'm writing his handle on a sticky note here so that you can see it and follow him. Dan Krynas is also the creator of our Instagram page and creating a YouTube channel for Past the Scope EDU. So we appreciate Dan. He is a valuable member to our Past the Scope EDU community. He is working on his doctoral degree and just really inspires us to be better, to be just as what his podcast is titled, that leader of learning. So coming up next is D. Krynas. And if you aren't able to find him to follow him on Periscope, then go ahead and type in the hashtag Past the Scope EDU, and I'm sure his broadcast will go live right at about 4 o'clock. So tune in, have your tap game strong, give him some hearts, show him some love. I'm sure he's going to bring us some awesome, awesome things about his journey through education, maybe even through personal life and narrative of what he discovered. Thank you guys for tuning in, and please continue to tune in for the rest of the evening because there are maybe more scopers that are coming to share what they've discovered. Thanks, guys. See you soon.